Greetings and thank you all for watching. Thank you guys for being here. I want to welcome you all to this broadcast, this live broadcast on the You're Safe With Me Facebook page. We are also streaming on YouTube from the Broken Veil Worship, so you can watch us there. But I want to thank you and welcome you all. And do me a huge favor, okay? Please share this broadcast, press the share button, and let people know that there is an amazing discussion coming up with two amazing young men who are very near and dear to me. And yes, you guys are young. Go ahead. It's okay. I'm young too. Listen. But yes, these are amazing men who are leaders in the community. They've been a blessing to me, and I think it's only fitting that we have African-American men tell their story when it comes to the implications of the Derek Chauvin trial. So yes, go ahead, like, share, and let people know. Even tag a friend if you need someone to understand the experience of the Black man. If you got a friend and I think they need to hear about this, tag them. We won't be mean. We won't hurt your feelings. I mean, you might get hurt, but it's not going to be intentional, right? We just want to inform and let people understand what's going on in the world and for the Black community. So I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about what You're Safe With Me is. I received a word from God last year around this time when I was silent. I was silent and I didn't know what to say about everything that was going on and the killings and the murders of innocent Black people. I didn't know what to say because I didn't want to offend. You know, I'm that kind of person that I'm just like, man, I don't want to offend anyone. So let me be quiet. But then I asked God, what do I say? And he said, well, you're safe with me. And I had to think about it because I didn't know, what did he mean by that? Are you just saying, Lord, I'm safe with you? But I think he wanted me to take it further to help people to know that they need to become a safe place. Everybody should be safe. I could come to you and say to you, you're safe with me. And what if African Americans had a new message, a new narrative where they are known to be safe? Would we have the kind of killings that we see today? And what if police officers also said that? So we are bridging the gap between Black and Blue lives. We want to have conversations and discussions that would stop the senseless killings, okay? So that is an abbreviated version of what we're about. I have, again, some great men here and I want to introduce them, but you may be asking, well, I'm here for them. I know Dan and I know Derek, but I don't know you. Okay, so my name is Lucretia Ruffin. I am the founder and visionary of You're Safe With Me. We just came out of Broken Veil Worship. We were an initiative under that umbrella, and now we're coming out, praise God, and we're now becoming an organization. Just turned in the paperwork actually yesterday to become incorporated. So we're excited about the movement of this organization. So yes, snap. So let me go ahead and introduce these men. I want to first start off with Pastor Dan. Pastor Dan is a friend of mine, and he is not a stranger to the You're Safe With Me platform. In fact, he was a speaker at our Night of Unity and Worship last year on the anniversary of the March of Dr. Martin Luther King and his I Have a Dream speech. We had an amazing time. He gave some really encouraging words and set an atmosphere that I believe helped people leave and they weren't in fear anymore. They were stronger. They were better. Pastor Dan, thank you for being here. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to have tonight. And I'm hoping that not only will it give clarity, but also will inspire someone to join the conversation, you know, wherever they find themselves in life, that, you know, you can be an asset and not a liability wherever you are. So that's what I'm really looking for tonight.
Amen. So thank you again, Pastor Dan. And now to introduce Derek Sire. Am I saying that last name? I've always wondered which one it was, Sayer or Sire.
Sire is correct.
Sire is correct.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Derek Sire, he told me that he is a mentor, and he does seem like a mentor. We had coffee a few weeks back, and I ate up everything he said. He is very wise, very kind, and he said he's a professional hugger. So I know that you're excited about the COVID numbers going down, right? You're like, I can hug again.
Hey, I fought through COVID. I fought through. Bring it on in.
It was hard. You're like, man, can we? I totally get that. But yes, he is a man of God, and he is also a father, and so is Pastor Dan. I forgot to say that. Husbands and fathers as well. So let's not prolong this thing. So let's go right into the discussion. We're talking about Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer who was convicted on all charges on the death of George Floyd. He faces 40 years in prison for second-degree murder, 25 years for third-degree murder, and up to 10 years for second-degree manslaughter. And my first question is to you all is, what was going through your mind when you first heard of this incident of the murder of another Black man? What was going on? And either of you can go first.
Pastor Dan, go ahead.
Well, I think sometimes, if you're not a part of the Black community, you haven't lived in it. Whenever we cry out about these things or we make our voices heard, some may mistake because they see violence in the Black community that this is something that we want to be used to, or we want to be normalized, or we know how to deal with, or that trauma is just something that, we've gotten used to. But the reality is that there's a lot of pain in the Black community there. When I and I hate to say this, but when I saw it, because I've seen it so many times in my life, of course, I was shocked at the amount of time of video. That's the longest video that I've ever seen in a police killing. So I was shocked at that. But then I wasn't shocked. I think that's the part of it that most people don't get, because these are some things that we've come to expect. We've also come to expect protests. We've also come to expect riots. We've also come to expect the fact that the justice system won't work for us. And I think a lot of people, when they heard the verdict, it was interesting, because I remember when I was in high school. Let me make a parallel real quick. When I was in high school, and if you grew up in the Black community and you've seen this cycle all the time, and you never see cops convicted of anything, when the OJ trial was going on, a lot of Black people, and I was a teenager then, but I listened to a lot of older Black people who were 30, 40 years my senior, because the Black community had been lambasted for years. People began to not even care if OJ was guilty or not. They just wanted one time for the system to work for them like it's worked for others, whether they were guilty or not. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. Now, of course, I want to know who's guilty and who's not. I want the truth to be revealed. That's what I care about. But because of the way things have worked, people just wanted one win. And if we could get just one win. So I think, there's a duality of emotion that Black people experience. We don't want to see anyone else die at the hands of police or at another Black person. So on one hand, there was shock. And then I think, and let me just make it clear, are you asking just about the death of George Floyd, or also about the verdict itself?
Mm-hmm.
Well, right now I'm talking about the death of George Floyd.
Okay, so I'll keep it there for right now. A part of me was shocked, and I'm glad that there was still shock. But then there's a lot of me that was numb, because unfortunately this has been normalized in my life's experience. So those are my thoughts.
Yes, I agree with that, Pastor Derek. Or do you just want to be called Derek?
Whoa.
No.
Derek is quite fine.
Derek, how did you feel about the death of George Floyd?
Yeah. So I think, I know, seeing things like that, not only is it, are you feeling a lot of different things at the same time? Part of it is shock. Another part is numb part, because I've seen it often, living in a home where my front door has been kicked in, where I've had police officers come up to me as a kid. I'm coming from the candy store. They cut their car in front of me and my friends on our bikes. They get out, open up our sacks and eat our snacks and throw empty wrappers back in, like seeing your 8-year-old, 9-year-old friends in handcuffs on the side of the curb. Like you get numb to some stuff. I think the other shocking part is for it to not only be broadcasted for us to see, but for the world to see, right? Because unless you find yourself on the wrong side of the railroad tracks or on the wrong side of the community, then it doesn't become visible to you, right? You only hear of certain things. But for this to be recorded and put out there for the world to see, I think that was probably the shocking part. It wasn't shocking to see it, right? That's the numbing part, is that, here we go, another cop doing, whatever. The shocking part was for the world to see, for the world to see. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like, you know your mama cuss. You know your daddy cuss, you know what I'm saying? But for them to do it out in public was like, whoa, mama must really be mad. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just some things that happen at home that does not happen out in the community for everybody to see, for your friends to see, for your friends' parents. It's just some stuff that doesn't see. So to me, I did feel the numb, but I felt the shock as well. And I think oftentimes that's the triggering part for people. Right? It's everything happening at the same time. I can deal with one emotion, right? I can deal with either or, but all of it together, it creates this element of shock. And also it's this traumatic trigger as well, right? It's when you think you feel safe, right? Louis Farrakhan said this. He said, they tricked us. They made us feel safe with this conviction, but this conviction doesn't change what's happening on the block on a Tuesday, right? We got it. That's absolutely fine. We got it. But it doesn't change next week and the week after. Some other things have to take place. So to answer your question, when I saw the George Floyd incident, I felt the numbness that Pastor Dan's talking about, that probably many people feel. I also felt the shock, but the shock wasn't because I was seeing it. The shock was because everybody else was seeing it as well.
Yeah, that kind of leads me to the next part, is the media and the optics surrounding this case. And I think you already explained that, but I'm going to let Pastor Dan say a little bit more about that. What did that do, in your opinion? Because he shared what it did for him, but what about you? What's your opinion about the media and the optics surrounding this case?
Well, I think the first thing you got to realize about the media is that media is driven by ratings. It's driven by the bottom line. It's driven by the dollar. And it doesn't matter if you're on the conservative or liberal side. It's all the same. I think at some level, and we need to speak about this openly, all those guys are competitors, but behind closed doors, they're shaking each other's hands. So this is a conundrum, if you will, of billionaires who are all going after the same pot. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that now that it's out, which is one of the reasons why Emmett Till's mother did not have a closed casket funeral, because she wanted the world to see what was going on. And so now people are being able to see what we deal with on a daily basis. The tragic thing is this. Here's the tragic thing, is that people still are trying to figure out how he died. If you watch that case close, oh, it was the exhaust fumes. Oh, it was the drugs in his system. Oh, it was because of this, because there could not be any case in which a police officer would have intentionally killed someone, because they just don't do that. So even in the face of something that's very clear and obvious, we're still trying to create a narrative of an innocent, blameless, Puritan type of police force, which we know does not exist. And I tell people this all the time, and I think this relates to what you were talking about, media. There's a difference between the world and your world. There's a difference. And a lot of times people look at the world through their eyes, and oftentimes our white brothers and sisters, because they are the majority. You come into this world as the majority, so you're always looking at it as if everyone is on the same level. You never have to consider, one of my older friends who's almost 70, he's a white gentleman, he lives in Oklahoma City. He said he did not even see a black person until he was 13. And I said, do you understand that is the very definition of white privilege, that you could actually be in the world and never see a black person in your world? See, there's the distinction, the world, your world. I could have never made that choice. That choice was not given to me. I had to live in your world. I had to transact in your world. And I think that when the media gets into it, because most people are informed by the media, and media is so transacted today that it has taken away the license for people to think by themselves or for themselves. And so people don't even understand. They're having thoughts, but they're not thinking, because media is driving that thing. And if you're not careful, like I told my daughter, I said, when you get in ninth grade, I want to see your social studies or your history book, because I want to know everything they wrote about Obama's presidency. And I'm just, bringing some things together. And I want to know everything they wrote about Trump's presidency. I lived through it, and so did you. But I want to know what they wrote, because they're informing your mind about how that thing went, even though you experienced it. So media is very important. I tend to get, my learning from a lot of different people and experiences. And what I often find is that it's not what people say it is. Truth can be relative. I mean, it just can. And matter of fact, not only can it, it is. People can go to the same movie, sit in the same time zone, and come out with two very different experiences. If you study neurolinguistics, you'll kind of understand this. I don't have time to go through all of that. But what we need to understand is how are we being informed? How is that information shaping our worldview? How is it shaping or changing our filter through which we look through things? And I think maybe for the first time in this generation, people are being forced to see something through another filter. And when you've been on top and you've been in charge and you've had the authority, when people feel like they're losing power, even in the face of truth, they will become defensive.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, what we're dealing with in that respect.
Yeah, I like what you said about different perspectives, our world versus their world versus the world. I was thinking about the optics and how I felt like, this is me thinking spiritually, that they're trying to make us be afraid. Now, it is a fearful thing. I mean, it is a scary thing to be pulled over and not know if you're going to live. Okay. It is scary. But I feel like spiritually, this thing was set up somehow to produce fear in us. And I believe that fear leads to hatred, and it just stirs up more division, more problems. Can either of you tell me a little bit about that and what you guys think about maybe what was happening spiritually behind the powerhouses of the media and what they were doing and why they were shaking hands and what was the agenda?
Pastor Dan, go ahead.
No, because I want Derek to speak on this. So what I don't want to do, I think we can hold two things in tension. What I don't want us to do is to live in fear, but I also don't want us to miss or disrecognize the reality of what goes on in our neighborhoods. I mean, it's a real thing. Now, something can be magnified by the media. For instance, think about this. Anytime one of these situations comes up, then what happens? The worst of who that person is, usually in their past, is brought out. And so what it means is that, hey, this person deserved this. We just got rid of one of the earth's worst people. But if it's a police officer, their best is brought out. Now, that's not a narrative. That is an exaggeration. It's not an egregious, articulation of the facts. It is a fact. It is a fact. We deal with that. Now, of course, I could say the same thing. And now that you bring that out, I could say the same thing about the coronavirus, because the CDC tells you, if you go to their website, it's right there. They will tell you that stress, anxiety, and fear compromises your immune system up to 70%. If I want to make that argument about a spiritual agenda, I can make the argument that fear spread the coronavirus faster than contact because of the media. So, because I think this way, if the Rubik works in one thing, it has to work in another situation if we're going to use that as that. So, yes, I do believe there's some media proliferation. I do believe that. I think that has, some things to do with it. But I don't want us to get to the point to where we forget that there is a real problem. That there is a real problem. I think the question, and I won't say a better question, but I think another question we have to ask is, why is it in these situations that convictions are few and far in between? That may be another question that we have to ask, because listen, after he was subdued, why wasn't it over? I mean, there's so many questions that we could ask, and we just had a case about that. But I do believe, I think I believe in both. I think there's fear there, but also think that some of that is healthy fear. It's not always exaggerated. It's not always some agenda to keep the black man down. If you listen to Candace Owens, which I don't, but the times that I've heard her, I'm just going to keep it real. If you listen to her, it's all media. There is no such thing as systemic racism. The United States was not built on the backs of systemic racism or structural racism. Racism is not a social construct, but history does not bear that out. So I think that, yes, we can sometimes exaggerate things, just like with Ma'Khia Bryant. I don't think that, my personal opinion, I don't think that officer had another choice because he had to take a life to preserve a life. It's a split-second decision. I've done ride-alongs with the police officers at the behest of the former chief of police, and I did them at midnight into the early morning to really see what they deal with. I'll tell you of one of those circumstances later on in the program tonight. I'll tell you of those things. I think one of the problems with the community is that the community doesn't understand the job of the police officer and what they have to go through on a daily basis, nor does the police officer understand what the community is going on a daily basis. And so what you have is two groups who are ignorant of what each other deal with on a daily basis. That confusion right there, if they understood each other, it would literally annihilate most of the problems we have, but we're not willing to have honest conversations. And so I think that's where we need to start with that. And everyone, you have to be humble to come to the table with that, to learn something that you don't know about what another person is going through.
You know, what Pastor Dan just did, we started out with media, right? With media, and we ended up talking about communication between law enforcement and community. And this is what I want to kind of connect those. Not that he didn't do a good job, but I do want to say that it's very difficult to talk about one thing in isolation. It's very difficult to talk about one thing without connecting it to others. Right. If you talk about media and the fear that it produces, then you talk about there being good fear versus unhealthy fear. Right. Good fear is knowledge. It's awareness. Unhealthy fear, right, is paralyzing and it creates division, right? But how do we get rid of fear? We get rid of fear with communication and express expectations. And that's how we end up with law enforcement and civilians interacting together, right? See what I just did? I just tied that whole thing together because it's impossible to talk about one without talking about the other. Yes. If you shake this down here, this thing moves. If you shake fear, it eventually ripples out to civilians and law enforcement. Yes. Why are people shooting so quickly? It's because they're afraid and they're undertrained, right? Why are civilians running? Because they're afraid and they're undertrained. It's the same side, two different sides of the same coin, right? Yeah. So I want to back up a little bit, and I'll stay a little bit closer to media than Pastor Dan did, even though it's very important. But I just want to say this. I think there are people that are using media to push a narrative, right? But the media, which I tell my daughter all the time, it's what you do with it, right? Social media can be used for good, right? Mass media, news, music, movies, it can be used for good. In the hands of the wrong people, it becomes a weapon, right? It becomes something that is divisive. It cuts to divide instead of cuts to sever, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that not only is there a global agenda being pushed, but I also think that we push the agenda as well. At the very click of a button, right, on 6 platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, like I can get a message out to how many other people are following me, whether it's true or not. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with mass media. Whether it's true or not, I want to be the first. Whether it's true or not, I want to make sure that people are watching this channel. Whether it's true or not, I got to get the message out. And oftentimes being first, it creates this incorrect perspective, and people are not being held accountable to that. In the same way that I believe officers should be held accountable, in the same way that I believe our politicians and our legislators and our leaders should be held accountable, I think the freaking news should be held accountable, right? I think the people should, when you report something that was wrong, instead of coming out and being like, hey guys, sorry, last week, at the end of your 30-minute segment, hey, last week, we misreported that instead of it being a 6'2" black male, was actually a 5'3" white male with the hoodie on. And we extend our sincerest apologies. We'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Like that's all they get. That's what they get. And so I think when we're talking about media and fear, again, Pastor Dan hit it right on the head. It's impossible. It's impossible to shake this down here and this not move. But what we want to do is we end up talking about these topics in silos. We want to pull out something and let that be the narrative instead of fleshing the whole thing out. Pastor Dan, I see you chomping at the bits over there. Jump in.
No, I just think like you hit something that's so critical, because I think one of the things, if you think about, I'm 42. And I remember when there was a day that I did not have access to this much information. I had to wait.
Wow.
I had to wait until somebody reported it. I had to wait the next day. I couldn't get it in seconds.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the human brain at this point in human history was made to process this much information at one time. Mm-hmm. And so today I can be mad at the police, but then something else comes out tomorrow and I'm on the other side, and you've got people flip-flopping. And then you've got something, like you said, comes up on TikTok, something comes up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and I don't know which way to go with, and I don't know who to support. I don't know who to disengage from. And we're processing so much information that no one knows. Listen, one of the things I loved, and somebody might get mad about this, but one of the things I loved about George Bush Jr., even though I didn't agree with everything, he stood on what he believed. Mm-hmm. And it made me respect him, because even then we were still in a time where we had time to process the information that was given to us. And here's what happens. When I have time to process the information that's given to me, guess what else I have time for? I have time to research and investigate the information that's been presented to me, to find out if it is true, to find out if it is verifiable, to find out if it is viable. When I don't have time to do that, the only thing I can do is just go with who I like at the moment. Who's my favorite person? So we've got an influx and an inundation of information that I think is really destroying our ability to research. I was telling someone the other day, hey, this is really how you research. This is the simplest way that I can tell you how to research. You read a book, which a lot of people don't do today. They just go to the internet. But if you read a book, any good author worth his salt is going to understand that he's got contemporaries and predecessors that he's pulling from, or she's pulling from, to get to a point. There's really no original thought or idea. There may be an original thought or idea for a generation, but there's influences coming from the previous generation. Well, then when that person references somebody, then you go read that person they reference. Then that next author references somebody, and then you keep doing that, reading what the references are until you get as close as you can to the original idea. Now, what does that do? That affords you the time to actually understand the concept that produced what it is in your generation. If you don't do that, and we haven't been able to do that because information is coming so fast that we don't really know. I was telling someone the other day, he said, I disagree with you vehemently. I disagree with you. I said, okay, well, I'm interested in what your premise is, because I'm always up for a discussion. I said, what's your premise from which your disagreement stems from? Well, I don't have one. Well, it's not that you disagree. You don't understand.
That's right.
See, there's a difference, because any disagreement, I'm assuming that when you say you disagree, that you have a foundation from which you're coming from. That disagreement has to come from somewhere. And so there's a big gap in understanding that we're missing because we're processing too much information at one time.
Yeah, Dave Chappelle said, I'm sorry, Lucretia. Dave Chappelle, I don't know if y'all watch Dave Chappelle. I'm a Dave Chappelle fan.
Yes.
He said this generation, you can't feel anything because you feel everything.
Come on.
You can't feel anything because you feel everything. You got so much information coming at you that you can't even stand up for anything because you're trying to stand up for everything. Right? We have this new thing that's coming every single time, right? If it's not this group, it's this group. And people saying, if you for this group, then you gotta be for this group. And it's like, wait a minute, hold on. It's crazy, because I don't want to go off on a tangent here, right? But we talk because we're George Floyd, Derek Chauvin. That's why we're here today, right?
Right.
And it's very important that we stay very close to that. But again, you can't shake that topic and then not flow down to this other stuff, right? I was sitting there, I'm sitting there looking at the list of names of people that have been killed by the police in the last 3 years. And I'm just scrolling. It's like, I want to show love to one, but they're like, you've been talking about Breonna Taylor. You've been talking about George Floyd. How come you ain't been talking about it? It's like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry. Like, them too. How about that? And it's like, well, what about them? Well, them too. I'm sorry. And so I say all that to say, we're talking about the impact of media. That's what started this question. I always want to bring us back. We talked about the impact of media and how it influences our ability to process and be divisive in our critical thinking, right? Or our lack of critical thinking. I'll say this and I'll pass it back to Chris. Pastor Dan said, I want to know the premise on which you disagree, right? And I always tell people this when we're getting into these debates, if you have a basis of disagreement, you are able to articulate it and you still disagree. Okay, don't come with me with no I feel like or I think. You know what I'm saying? Because that pool is real shallow. I'm gonna tip that over and it's gonna be a kiddie pool in 5 seconds. That's how shallow that thought is. But if you can come to me and you can talk to me about something you read and you researched and people you talked about on both sides, if you can talk to me about a TED Talk or YouTube clip or something that you've done outside of your feelings, that's the first thing you learn. Pastor Dan, when you go to school and you get your degree, works cited. Not only do I want to know who you consulted, but you better report that crap right. It better be in alphabetical order. Your indentations better be half inch to the right. You know what I'm saying? Like, come back to me with some stuff. Otherwise, why are we having this conversation? In social media, they present you with something without the evidence. And that's one of the impacts that media has on this whole thing. The whole thing. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
You know, I got so much from what you guys said, but I'm going to just piggyback off of the last thing you said about social media and the issues with that. And when I had coffee with you the other day, you gave me such good information about how to start these conversations, because there needs to be one-on-one contact. It can't be social media anymore. It can't be. We need to get in front of one another, get to understand each other, and things will start turning. You know, these changes, these messages, these narratives, they can start changing with a real conversation being with real people. But anyway, I just had to say that and give you your props, sir. So. Now let's go to the next part, what I wanted to bring up, which is the verdict. Now I remember the day that everything started, you know, that the verdict came out, because on my timeline, and we're talking about social media again, I just keep saying all three charges, you know, people were just saying this, saying that. So I want to hear from you all. What was so big about that? Because I want to say this really quick. I want to quote Al Sharpton. Now we're celebrating the 3 charges, but this is what he said, and I'm searching for it because I want to say it the right way.
Don't misquote the bishop.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Hold on.
Not my man.
Not even come. I can't even find it. But he said he basically said, he said the celebration is basically we shouldn't be celebrating. He said this is a touchdown. He said this is a first down, not a touchdown. And I thought that was interesting because it really is true. Can y'all talk a little bit about the verdict and the celebration, or maybe we shouldn't be celebrating? Y'all go ahead. I'm happy with y'all talking. Believe me, it makes me look better not to talk. Y'all, y'all are the good ones. Okay.
You know, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, it's the same mistake that people made when Trump, went through what he went through the first time. He was impeached. And people didn't know the process of impeachment. And again, here it is. There's this gap of knowledge. When you don't know the process, people are celebrating, thinking he's on his way out, not understanding this has to go to the Senate and he has to be convicted by the Senate. Well, in the same way, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but he hasn't been sentenced yet. Right. So we just got to deal with the real stuff, because you could come back and he could get 10 years. He could get 10 years, because the truth of the matter is the 2 lesser convictions really don't carry. See, you got to understand how they stack these things. It's the first conviction that he can really be sentenced on. And you go back and you can research me on that, but that's the way that works. My sister is a lawyer. She was in the military for 31 years. She was JAG. She was a military lawyer. She's explaining this to me. People don't understand the system. And I think this, not all the time, but a lot of times, the reason why we keep getting bamboozled by the system is because we don't understand it. We don't understand it. So I reserved my excitement. I was glad that it was televised, that someone actually got convicted for what was obvious to me. But at the same time, if he gets 10 or 12 years, he could be out in 3 for good behavior. He could go somewhere else and get another job. This is exactly what happened to Betty Shelby in Tulsa. This is exactly what happened to other officers that were in Dallas a couple years ago when they shot the young lady through the window. all these different types of things. And so I think, again, what you're seeing is the repercussions in the Black community of never having the system work for them. It's like what's his name? The guy Philando Castile, was it in Baltimore, when they had handcuffed him and dealt with him, that his spine separated itself from his neck, and no one got convicted, and he was in police custody the whole time. Now, how does that happen? And then people say, why don't you have faith in the system? And then when that not guilty verdict came down, what it appeared was as if he did it to himself. He did it to himself. How can you kill yourself in handcuffs? Mm-hmm. So I don't want people to get angry with those who are Black and brown who are not as excited, because it's not over. The sentencing is about in a month. That's kind of what I'm waiting on. And so in that sense, Reverend Sharpton was right. It was a first down, not a touchdown. And we're still not sure that this will serve as a precedent for other situations. Now, if the Supreme Court made a law, okay, let's do something really quickly. Asian hate was going on. Within a month, they had laws on the books. Within a month. We've been fighting for this stuff for years, since the inception of this nation, yet barely any laws on the book. If you research, the Civil Rights Act came out in 1964. It wasn't until 1983 that all states were actually complying by law. But within a month, you've got, and I'm thankful for this, for the Asian community. Those are my brothers and sisters. I'm glad it happened, but it hasn't happened for us. And people are still wondering why there may not be some excitement in some Black circles and brown circles. That's the reason why. That's what I have to say on that.
Yeah, you think about the expectation of delay in the Black community. You think about when the Emancipation Proclamation took place, it was years. It was years, right? You think about the civil rights movement, years, right? I was doing this research. I was presenting at a teachers conference, and I said, "You guys understand? Do you realize that the last school to be desegregated officially on the books was in 1979?
Whoa.
Do you know when they said desegregate schools? And when it actually was the last one, and that last school was in Oklahoma, 1979. And so you think about the expectation of delay, right? It's almost like there's certain people groups that are like, I don't know, like they like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's like hoping your mama forgot to whoop you. You know what I'm saying? It's like you walking around the house tiptoeing, knowing that she can like snap at any moment, but you just kind of hoping. I'll say this as well. When the verdict first came out, when the convictions, the announcement first came out, I texted my wife, and all I said was all three counts. That's all I said, right? And we began texting back and forth, and she was like, "How do you feel?" I said, "It's very difficult to celebrate death."
Yeah.
It's very on either side. It's very difficult. If it was first degree and they sentenced him to the death, I would not have celebrated the death.
Nope.
What people are confused about is that we don't want anybody to lose life. We don't want anybody, and when I say lose life, I mean physically, and then being put away somewhere where you're not able to live life. We don't want that. Nobody wants that. What we do want is to prevent what happened that caused that consequence to take place. I don't even want it to be an issue. I tell people all the time, the race card is the last card I pull. People think Black people pull the race card, the first one. You know how many times we go through stuff to get to the race card? Maybe they were qualified, or maybe I showed up late. Maybe my tie was crooked. Maybe my breath was stinking. Maybe I didn't fill the application out right. Like, we go through all this stuff because we don't want it to be race. It's the last thing we want it to be. And so when I heard the verdict, all three charges, when I heard it, I couldn't even celebrate because it was like, man, we still got a long way to go, man. You know, that man, he's God's child the way he was created, you know, as well. He has potential as well. I want him to be redeemed and reconciled to his purpose as well. And it's very difficult for me to celebrate him going away and losing life. What I can try to separate and celebrate based on the conviction and the charges is, man, we got a first down. When you've been punting the whole game, when you've been fumbling, when it's been interceptions, when the referee been throwing flags against you, right, and you've been playing with no hands, it's very difficult to not celebrate a first down. And if you've ever played against a team that sucked and they get a first down, they celebrate like they won the game. And I just want to caution people, we down 50-0. Enjoy the first down, but we down 50-0. Like, we still got some work to do.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm thankful for what you said, Pastor Dan, when I'm trying to remember the specific thing that you said, but dang it, it escaped me. But I'm thankful for what you guys are saying and helping people understand that we can celebrate, but we can't celebrate because we are still so far behind. Oh, now I remember. It was the sentencing. Is that the sentencing is still yet to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can't celebrate until the sentencing, until we actually can make this thing a law where lawyers can use this case on other cases, right? So I want to go to, you know, kind of bringing this thing home. I know people have been watching and you guys have things to do. So I want to go ahead and wrap this up with this last question. How can we use this case to change the narrative for the African-American man and the law enforcement and bridge the gap between them?
Well, and I'll let Derek have the last words on this. You know, I wish that was really, you know, in our power. I wish it really was, because whether this becomes a precedent, because, all right, so it works differently. You know, if the Supreme Court, things go to the courts, when they make a decision on a case, what that gives a lawyer the opportunity to do is to use that case as precedence in another case to say, hey, this was decided then, and now I can argue this way in the courts because the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, did that. Just because he's convicted and just because he's going to jail in the court of law, which is where these things go, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be seen different. Now, as far as the African-American community is concerned, you know, how can we see it different? I'm somewhat at a loss in that. I think that there are some things in the Black community that we could do to help ourselves to make sure we don't end up in these situations. But, you know, for instance, in Oklahoma City, where you guys live, you know, they got the new grocery store. The old one that was up the street, I knew a guy that worked for Pepsi, and, you know, he would come in and put stuff. At that time, they were experiencing a lot of inventory loss. And people were like, man, you know, Black people shouldn't steal. You know, they're tearing up their own community. And I said, are you actually looking at a problem of theft? Are you looking at people who are addicted to thievery, or are you looking at a hunger issue? Mm-hmm. I mean, because, and if it's a lack of resources to food, then that's going to drive someone to do something. And so, of course, there's some things we can do in our own community, but until, and this really breaks my heart to say this, because there's a difference between the laws being changed in the land versus the heart of someone being changed. And Derek a moment ago outlined that, where in 1979, when it came to desegregation, the last school that it happened with is in Oklahoma. I was 1 year old then. Mm. So that means that I came into a world where by the books, desegregation was delayed, but in the minds of people who still wanted segregation, it was still alive and popping. So even now, every election, you're seeing pockets of people who still do everything they can to block certain people from coming into their neighborhoods and things like that. So, and I hate to end on an I don't know, but I don't know without things being changed in the highest court of the land, whether that be the Supreme Court or state Supreme Courts, that we're going to get some stuff done. You know, I'm never a Debbie Downer. I'm never pessimistic, but sometimes I think we have to have books, things on the books, either at state Supreme Courts or the United States Supreme Courts, to coerce people to do what they're supposed to do until hearts change. And I think until that time, anything that we can do to help people in those situations better educate themselves about their own life and about how to behave themselves, if you will. And I know you've had a lot of talks in the schools about that, Derek, with, young Black men. Mm-hmm. I think that's the best we can do. But whether this is going to have any impact in the immediate, I don't know.
On the way back I was in Muskogee today, and I was driving back and just trying to listen to a couple of podcasts and kind of get a pulse on what different people are saying, preparing for our talk today. And Mr. Michael Owens is a guy that's in Oklahoma City. He has a One Mic podcast. One Mic, Michael Owens, One Mic. See what he did there? It's only one mic. Okay,
right.
Yeah, but he voiced his concern. And I disagree with him a little bit on this point. He said that police departments, law enforcement, they have this thing called police and community relations. And he said it's worthless. It's pointless. Why are our officers out here mentoring kids, hanging out in schools? We got people for that, right? He says, in fact, he also said that change can't be made on a local level. I also disagree with that. He says that it has to be on a higher level. And I get what he's saying. But I've had the privilege and the opportunity to work alongside law enforcement officers who train every day in hand-to-hand combat, jiu-jitsu and karate, that spend time on the range, that do research about crime, and they hang out with people, which leads me to my next point. I was listening to this presentation of this guy, and he actually stood up. Right, it was less of a presentation and more of a filibuster in a city council place, and I don't know exactly where he was, but it's a Black guy, and he was talking about how policing in the community has to be done by people in the community. He said, this is what he says. He says, you take our tax dollars and you give it to somebody who drives in from a community and polices people they have no idea about, right? The equivalent would be Oklahoma City paying people who live in Mustang and Yukon and Norman to come in and police people in Oklahoma City. They have no idea about those people, right? They don't live with them. They don't work with them. They don't play with them. They don't go to church with them. Their kids don't hang out with each other. So to answer your question, talking about Black men law enforcement and how does this particular case play into that, I honestly believe that if we can get people to live, work, play with each other, then policing becomes the least of our worries. It's a big issue right now. And I'll say this. This is how I know. My need to discipline my kids decreased when I got to know them as individuals instead of this iron fist. I no longer had to spank my kids. I no longer had to come to them as this authoritative person when I got to know them as an individual. Oh, you're throwing your bottle on the ground because you got on a dirty diaper. Oh, you're throwing your food on the ground because you're done eating. Oh, you're rolling around on the ground because you're sleepy, right? I haven't spent time with you. You don't have the language. You don't have the tools. We don't have the relationship or the rapport. So allow me to learn your language. Allow me to learn your culture, your ethnicity, your race, your way of communicating, right? Let me spend time learning that, and policing will take care of itself. What's my answer? I believe that there has to be this intercommunal effort that goes forth on purpose, that takes place on purpose, and it has to do with conversation. It has to do with interaction. It has to do with doing those things on purpose. And I promise you, we're going to go back to Green Acres and Andy Griffith. If we do this, right, you're going to have one cop walking up down the street with a pistol with one bullet in a revolver because he's not going to need it because that's a relationship. Now, I understand that's my pipe dream. Pastor Dan, that's my pipe dream. We far, far, far away from that. But I lean on a scripture that says all these different people came together and they had all things in common. right? And every need was met, and there was. Listen, man. I think that's a great start. If we can get people together, living with each other, working with each other, playing with each other, going to church, getting our kids and our families together, I think the policing takes care of itself. Pastor Dan, you can't give me the last word. After I said all that, I'm throwing it back to you. You got it.
No, I think that, Derek is right. I told you I'm not a pessimist, but I don't mind saying I don't know. So let me say this: I'm an optimist. And so let me lay responsibility at the feet of the church, not a denomination, not someone who thinks they're closer to the Bible. One of the things that I'm noticing is that we don't like to release perceived power. And I think what's going on now, and this is one of the purposes that God is using Corona for, you are seeing a lot of human-built kingdoms that were parading around as God's kingdom and church. They are being torn down, completely torn down. A lot of this has to do with white supremacy. And when I say white supremacy, I'm not talking about white people as a people. I'm talking about an institution that has delayed the freedom of all people. It's a mindset. So what you're seeing right now is listen, and I've got white brothers and sisters, but you had groups and camps praying profusely, rocking backwards and forwards in front of courthouses, saying the Lord said this, prophecies going forward, Trump is still going to be president. And all of that fell flat on its face, and yet no public repentance. So what we're dealing with is a lot of pride, and God says, okay, it's going far enough, because God gets tired. I don't think I know he sleeps nor slumbers, and I understand that, but God gets tired of you blocking and impeding the way of people's freedom, and they're crying out to him. One of the most saddest stories I ever heard is about a slave owner who had tied a slave to a tree, and he's whipping him for not doing his work well. And while he's whipping him, he's praying, he's asking God, what can I do to make this slave act right? The slave is praying at the same time while he's being beaten, and he's saying, what can I do to make this man stop beating me? And the question is, who is God listening to? Right? So you have a culmination of all these things, and when systems are being torn down, power is being taken away from what we know. And so here's my thing. I've told all of my friends, and I'm not gonna name any major churches or do anything like that tonight. I said, listen, you better get ready. I said, because in 5 years or less, and this is just me being prophetic, there are people you don't even know now that will be at the head. And then can I tell you a story? This will be something to, for both of you. So the night that Bishop Miller died, I was meeting with a partnership group that just lovingly gives to me and my family since we've been to Texas. And we were talking about faith or something like that. And all of a sudden I said, hey, I got to say something, guys. The Lord just told me something that is totally disconnected from what we've been talking about tonight. I said, God says leaders in this day are getting ready to go home with him. He's calling some leaders home. There's going to be a major shift. And everybody's like, well, where did that come from? And I didn't mean to change the mood. And I said that, and I said, they're going home for two reasons. God gave me this immediate download. And I said, they're going home and they're coming to be with him. So the Lord told me to tell them they're coming to be with me, but they're coming home for two reasons. One, because they made the way and their assignment is complete. They served their generation well. They fell asleep. And others because they're in the way. And God is my secret judge. The Lord told me that. And I counted the time, 2 minutes and 32 seconds later, my brother Ochan, whom you know, he texted me. He said, hey, man, Bishop Miller died. That week, people started dropping off like flies. And I told him, because when I said it's going to be in entertainment, it's going to be in the media, it's going to be, Larry King. I mean, all these people, it just happened. And that's not over. Because there is literally a changing of the guard, because, Holy Spirit told me this, that the Holy Spirit is grieved that our generation from 0 to 99 is still dealing with this.
Wow.
And Holy Spirit told me that it's his goal. This is why he's putting fires in the belly of people like Derek, me, my friend, Pastor Shep in California, that we cannot pass this on to another generation and say, well, it's for you guys to deal with now. We can't do it. It has to end here. And so what God is doing is he's removing things that in our own strength and with our own speeches and with how slow the system moves, we can never do it on our own. Now, it looks really ugly. It looks completely bad, but please understand me. This is the Lord. and that's the thing I want to end with. This is the Lord. He is using deconstruction for the purpose of reconstruction. This is the Lord. We don't see it that way, but it is. And so that's what I want to just have that last say into the hearts of the people. That's what's going on right now.
Well, I think you dropped the mic. Pastor Dan, Derek, Sire, I want to thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything that you've shared and poured out. I pray that the people were blessed. And I'm going to go ahead and end there. And I want to just have a little one-on-one time with the people. So I'm going to let you guys go and enjoy the rest of your evenings. Again, I appreciate you all, love you all, and I look forward to doing this again.
Yes, thank you so much.
You are welcome. Well, guys, I think this was an amazing discussion. Again, I'm so grateful to Pastor Dan and Derek for just all of that great wisdom that we were able to receive. And that last word, I don't know, it's really important to me. And I'm going to have a transparent moment right now, because he said that he's moving leaders that were in the way out of the way. And then some of the leaders, they completed their assignment and they had to go home. And if I'm honest, this platform, I did not ask for it. I didn't really want this, but it was so pressing on my heart to do it, because I have 4 Black young men as children. And I cannot leave this earth and not do my part to help them live a life that they don't have to worry about being pulled over, about their knee being on their neck. There was one time that I was thinking, what if I just explained to people that my children are A students, that they never lie, that they don't cheat, that they're music ministry, that they're music ministers in my church? What if I explained to them who these children are? Would their lives be spared? And I asked myself, why should I have to explain my children? Why do I have to explain why they should live? Why? No one else in this world has to do that. No one else has to make an explanation on why they should live. God placed us on this earth, and that's the only reason you need to be worth living, to have a life, to pursue a good life and the American dream, if you will. So I want to talk a little bit about You're Safe With Me and how you can partner with this organization. I've just put in the paperwork for us to become incorporated, a nonprofit organization. And perhaps you didn't know what to say when you saw all these things going down. And even with this trial, you wanted to stay out of the comments because you didn't want to feel any type of way. You're like, what message can I have right now that would glorify and honor God? And I believe this platform is the message that you're looking for. You see, I had a picture of people wearing a t-shirt saying, "You're safe with me." And I was like, what if people started saying that they're going to be a safe place? The Bible says that the name of the Lord is a strong tower and the righteous run in and they're safe. And we being the image of God, we being made in the image of God, well, we should mimic God. We should all be a safe place. Every policeman should be able to say that when you come in my space, you don't ever have to worry about your life being taken. Can we take away the fear? Can we take away the worry with being an African American, with being a police officer? Can we stop the madness that is going on? And I believe that this is the message that God gave me to contribute to the world. And I ask that you partner with it. If you want to give, you may go to our website. You may go to yoursafewithme.org, yoursafewithme.org, and just register there. Subscribe so that you can learn more about it, so that you can see more of these conversations, see more of what's happening, see more of the things that we're going to start to do. Again, we're in the beginning stages. Perhaps you're interested in joining and you want to be a part of something like this. Please let us know. Go to that website, put your information in so that you can have a way to connect with us. We need people, we need help, we need staff. Right now, we only have 3 people that are just active, and we are trying to build an amazing team so that this message can go out. I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you for your support. You may see Pastor Dan and Derek Sire on social media. You can just look up their names and follow them. They are really active, really great men that you can follow and learn more about Jesus Christ and about the police and all of these things, that as they are very active in the community. And again, my name is Lucretia Ruppin, and I am signing off. Thank you all for everything and for watching. May God bless you and keep you is my prayer. Goodbye.